Have you figured out your niche? Are you helping adding value to other people's lives? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to Munira's Musings with your host, Munira Zahabi.
Greetings from Chicagoland. This is Munira, your niche navigator. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Munira's Musings, where we showcase a person who has found their niche and are willing to talk about what they do with their gifts and how they got there. Today's guest is Sonya Etchemendy, my friend Sonya. Hi, Sonya. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is great.
You are welcome. Thank you so much for being here. We here help people discover their niches. There's everybody out there who's looking for a business. And are you in the right business? Why are you in business? What are you doing with your business? So we answer all of those questions. If you have those, all you have to do is find us and we can talk to you and see if you are in the right realm of your business, because niche finding is what we do. So without further ado, my friend Sonya has written a book called Tin Can Moments. So Sonya, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm a mother, a grandmother, a wife, got lots of dogs and a great amount of patience. But I've written Living a Life of Tin Can Moments. It has turned into a second book, which has created a trilogy. None of this was my plan. And it's amazing how if you just pay attention, God will put you on a journey and it just flows. So when I wrote my first book, Living a Life of Tin Can Moments, which ended up being an Amazon #1 best-selling book, I thought it was going to be a book about notes that my husband and I put into a can. But what I found out is there is a groundswell of people, all not just in my country, but all over the world, who are tired of the negativity. They're just tired of it. And so what a tin can moment is, it's an action. It's an action that someone takes to overcome an obstacle that they have. And it works. It absolutely works. I've lived a life of tin can moments and didn't realize it until my daughter, who, our children watch us.
Yes.
You hear that, right? But I found out they truly do watch us because my adult daughter, who just turned 44, told me that she's watched me live a life of tin can moments, which started when I was a young girl. And I tell the story in my book, how the stained glass window behind me was where my very first tin can moment happened as a young girl. I was 9, turning 10. And this stained glass window was in my grandmother's house, and I was in her arms when it happened. And she introduced me to Jesus, which eliminated an incredible obstacle I was having in my life at the time. So I ended up approaching my whole life with attitude and faith and balancing the two. The reason I say attitude before faith is what I found out, Munira, is if someone's got a really negative attitude, they're not only going to want to study God's word, they're not even going to want to talk about God's word. And so we have to work on our attitude so we're able to receive. When someone finally understands that you are 100% responsible for the attitude you have, nobody else can choose your attitude. If you have a bad attitude, you have chosen that. And if you have a good attitude, you've chosen that. Once you get it, and once you've conditioned your mind to go toward the positive, then that formula shifts and you put your faith first. And that's when you get on life's journey. That's when you're able to handle the journey that God has already planned out for you. Yeah, so the way this became a trilogy is when I was at the end of writing my first book, which is filled of stories of real people from all over the world who met obstacles. I'll just share briefly with you. My friend Phyllis, she and her husband had one child, And she sat on the porch every morning in her routine and waved her son going to the bus stop. And she watched him get killed by a car who ran over him as he was running for the school bus.
Oh,
And
wow.
he was 8 years old. Now, how do you recover from that? But because her attitude was intact and her faith was strong, she found herself ministering to other people who were mourning the loss of her son. And today she's a minister. So she was able to put her faith first to guide her because she already had the attitude that one needs to study God's word. So when I was finishing writing this book, my publisher called me and said, you know, you have to write a conclusion. And I said, really? It was my first book. I didn't know. And so the next call I got was from my doctor telling me that I had cancer, LPL lymphoma. LPL stands for a long, long word. You can Google it, but it's genetic. There's no cure. And I found out later it had settled in my bone marrow and now it's stage 4. So what do you do with that information? Well, but for the grace of God, I would have been, you know, having pity parties all over the place because that's a pretty tough piece of information to get. And plus I knew I was going to have to share this with my family. So in the conclusion of my book, I wrote about my diagnosis and I challenged myself that this is the ultimate tin can moment for me. What action am I going to take to overcome this diagnosis? And I took several actions. And I had said I'm going to write a second book and I'm going to call it The Ultimate Tin Can Moment. So, and I took a lot of actions. I don't let it define who I am. I don't let it determine the quality of my life. I literally turned it over to God. Now, some people may not believe in the same God I believe in. They may have a higher power that someone other than God, but for me, it's God. And when I truly did let it go, when you really let something like this go, I had to be reminded about my chemo treatments. I would forget about them. And my daughter, who accompanied me to all of them, would have to say, hey, you can't do that this week because you've got your treatments. So I started writing the second book, consulting with my doctor, because what happened when I started chemotherapy, my daughter and I created a partnership between me, the patient, my daughter, the family member, and the nurse in the infusion room who gave me the chemo drugs. Mm-hmm. And we just all agreed on what we could do, what we couldn't do. What could my daughter do to help the nurse, to take the load off the nurse? What could I be responsible for on the patient? And it was very simple, counting the bags, making sure I knew that I had enough bags that day, which helped the nurse one time with the final flush bag that she had forgotten about. And because we had established a partnership, I could easily say, I think I'm supposed to have another bag. I don't know what it is, but I think I am. And she went, oh, that's right. You need to flush. And so because we had established a partnership in the beginning, it was a smooth transition. I actually enjoyed the first round of chemo because it was fun. We laughed. We made it pleasant. So just to jump right into the second book, I've had 4 local doctors collaborating with me on this second book about a partnership between the patient, the family, and the nursing staff and doctor to make sure that no matter what the diagnosis is, it doesn't have to be cancer. My cardiologist is in this too. My oncologist, my cardiologist, my primary care physician, and my orthopedic doctor. They're all in this together. They understand the importance of that partnership. It makes everybody's life easier. And so the second book is all about the ultimate tin can moment being, and I've actually got a picture of what the cover looks like on the second book.
No.
Looking in the can, and the reason why it looks empty is that when you're given a diagnosis, you're looking for hope. And this can that we use in book number 1 ends up being a hope chest. When you read the notes from the can at the end of the year from the first book, it gives you new hope. You leave one year pulling all the positive stuff that happened in that year with you. But when you get a diagnosis, the can is empty. What do? You got to fill it with some kind of hope. And that's what the partnership does.
So let me ask you this. You talk in your first book about this window, I know, which is very, very sacred to you. Mm-hmm. And when did you first? Now, so when you said Tin Can Moments, I want to tell the viewers what that means. What she did was take everything positive that happened to her and her husband. He wrote his notes, she wrote her notes, and they put the positivity notes in a can, right? In a can.
One good thing a day.
One good thing a day. And then yes. And you started reading. So when did this actually start? I mean, it didn't start when you were turning 10. It started late.
Exactly. It was 2012. And my husband and I had made a decision that we were going to renovate the entire inside and outside of our 2-story home. Huge project. Anybody out there who's gone through any kind of renovation knows it is stressful. And my husband is an incurable pessimist, and I'm an incurable optimist. That's why we get along so good. We kind of balance each other out. But the negativity was getting so awful, you could slice it. The construction people would leave garbage on the yard at the end of the day, and which knob do we want here? And I finally said to my husband one day, I said, I cannot deal with all the negativity. And there was an old can that we had found during renovation. I've still got the can, an old can in the kitchen. And I said, listen, at the end of every day, just write one good thing that happened in your day. And I want that to be the last thing we think about before we go to bed. And let's just drop it in this can. There was no plan for what we were going to do with the can. So this was in August of 2012. And I told him, I said, I don't want to know what you write, and I'm not going to tell you what I write. Let's just, in our mind, leave the day with a positive thought. And some days it was hard to find something positive. Oh my goodness. It was hard, but we found it. So then fast forward to New Year's Eve of 2012. That's the one day of the year that my husband and I don't go anywhere. We stay home. And so New Year's Eve 2012, I said to my husband, hey, let's get that can. Let's read those notes. And he said, okay. So we opened the can. Munira, we cried, we laughed, we talked, we found out things that each other were going through and had dealt with that we didn't realize. And that was the best ending to any year we had had. And those notes were precious to me. So I went and got a Ziploc bag and I put them in there, and I got a felt tip pen and I wrote 2012 on it. And then I said, let's do this next year. He said, okay. So I wrote on a piece of paper, one good thing a day, do not open until December 31st, 2013, in that old tin can. We did that every year, reading the notes at the end of the year for 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, and then came 2017. And all this time, I was keeping the notes in Ziploc bags, and I still have them. And I thought, I don't know, what I'm going to do with them, but that we ended each year pulling out the positive. Well, in 2017 was the most challenging year my husband and I had ever had. I was diagnosed with double pneumonia and congestive heart failure, and I was not supposed to make it. In fact, the doctor told my husband, and I quote, unless your wife has had a hard life and is ready to go, all we can do is put her on life support. Well, my husband knew that I was not ready to leave this world. So he said to the doctor, you do what you have to do. She's not ready to go. And I was on life support for 8 days. All of a sudden, I started breathing on my own. My cardiologist, who I quote in the book, sat on the edge of my bed, and he said, I have no medical explanation as to why you started breathing again. He said, I feel strongly it was a divine intervention. And that was the first time that medicine, science, and faith had come together for me. And I looked at my doctor in a totally different way. And I also found out that all my doctors were men and women of faith. And so they understand that element of it. But I think, they're in a tough position. They can't talk a lot about it, but they can talk to me about it and in a way that I can share my experiences. So that happened. And then the week before Christmas of 2017, we're still there. The week after that, the week before Christmas, we had our favorite dogs attack each other, and there was blood everywhere in our living room, on our front porch. And my husband and I were as close to divorce as a couple can get. It was my dog against his dog, and we had to end up putting my dog to sleep and spent thousands of dollars on his dog to keep the dog alive. And so we were going to go our separate ways. Christmas didn't exist that year. And on Christmas Eve, I said to my husband, well, we might as well read the notes in the can because we're probably never going to do this again. And he said, okay. We started reading the notes, and it was like a hope chest for us. We had forgotten about the good things that had happened that year. And we were able to take the incident of the dogs and my near-death experience and table it, make it a priority in life where it should go. And so the notes in the can actually saved our marriage. So then in 2018, my good friend Eric Reed at the time had a show on Friday on Facebook Live, and it was called Fun Friend Friday. Well, Eric didn't know me very well, and I didn't know Eric very well at the time. But he had someone cancel on him last minute. And so he needed a replacement, and he contacted me like the day before. And I'm like, sure, you can interview me. And I thought he was just going to talk about my business, which is called Etch Your Life. It's a small business consulting company, and we help businesses understand that their employees are their key customers. So how do you use them to affect your bottom line? That's what I was prepared to talk about. But Eric had looked on the website, and we'd gone through the interview. We were at the very end, and he asked me a question. He said, now tell me about those notes that you and your husband write to each other. And all of a sudden, everyone on that feed, it blew up. Diane Dick ended up naming it Tin Can Moments. She also suggested maybe we could have one for the school system. And it was birthed on that day. And it never stopped. This, I'll tell you something funny is that whenever Diane said, oh, you can have a can for the schools, I thought, oh my goodness, been there, done that, got all the t-shirts. I don't want anything to do with the school system. I'm out of it. I have no connections, but I put it down anyway. And this is how God keeps us on our journey. About a year later, I'm still writing the book, and my company donates a certain percentage to charity each month, to 501c3s. And I was visiting one, and she said, I want to see the table of contents in your book. And I had school time cans, and I hadn't written anything in that chapter yet. But she understands the 10 Can Moment process and the value of attitude and faith and how that gives us so much power. And she said, listen, this is great for the schools. And I said, I have no connection in the school system. And she said, well, the superintendent is my really good friend, and I can get you in there. She said, but it'll only be for like 15 minutes. She got the appointment. We went in, we were there for an hour. And the superintendent said, I want to try this in a special school, and grades 1 through 12, a very special school in his district. And he said, if it works, we'll put it throughout the whole district next year. I met with the principal. I met with the teachers. We had a mini training session on it. My company financed the cans for the school because we knew the process would work, but they didn't. So we totally funded it. And at the end of that testing period, you cannot measure attitude, but you can measure behavior, which is a direct result our attitude. At the end of that rating period, the teachers could not believe the difference in the students. And the principal sent notes home to the parents and asked for parents' feedback. The school ended up giving me all that data because the parents could not believe not only the attitude changes, but the behavioral changes in their children. And the principal of the school told me that it was the best overall rating the school had ever gotten. And the only thing different they did was they introduced the Tin Can Moment school can to each student.
But they say, right, that if you write something down, like even if you do affirmations, or you write something down every single day, it helps your positivity, it helps your mindset, right? Because we tend, and it's true in any culture or any part of the world, I'll tell you that we always pick the negative. We never say, oh, I woke up today, thank you, God. We say, nothing ever goes right, and it's always that because we never see the good stuff, right?
Right.
We do it with our spouses, and I'm guilty of it too. It took me forever to figure this out because I always said, you never do this. You never get me flowers or, anything that hurt me. But never the fact that he made me breakfast one day, so the little things, positive things are always forgotten, and that doesn't go with the spouses, it also goes with the children and the grandchildren and everything else,
right?
But that power of writing it down, right? And keeping it away, because we never count our blessings, right? I am, you've gone through your health challenges. My husband went through health challenges. And until I met in 2018, I had a similar interview like I'm doing with you. And the fact is that I met this woman who was a caregiver. And she had taken care of her mother and had a hospice for her in her home, and then her husband. And she said, Munira, the only thing I'm going to let you do and give you permission to do is forget your business, forget your show. And I did for a few months, almost 9 months, I forgot my show. But everything else, what you are doing, just live in the moment. And we forget to do that, right?
Right.
And I am so glad I took that advice because early this year, my husband passed away. And
I'm so sorry for your loss. I knew you when it happened, and I'm very, very sorry for that loss.
Thank you. But here's the thing, right? We forget the good things that happen. The fact that, we spend a lot of time, and I wasn't crazy about working on my business. Oh my God, I got to do this. I got to do that. Just forget about it. Just table it. And
you end up with a peace. A peace overcomes you. And I saw you transition into that peaceful state. Because when I met you, you were not in such a peaceful state.
No, and I was in a frenzy. The fact is that, there's no, and that could be another talk that we could have. Caregivers don't get the support that they need. And there's a big movement now.
Exactly. And in my second book, it talks about that partnership and the value. Think of it as a stool with 3 legs. You got the patient, the caregiver, and then you got the medical staff. If one of those legs is not there, that stool is going to fall. And so there are a lot of family members who don't understand, number one, they are valued. And number two, they don't even know it because they're not told.
And they're not told, yes.
And part of the partnership makes sure they understand their importance.
And I my husband was going through a lot, and I would go and talk to the nurses and say, is there any help for people like me? And they would just look at me like I was talking a different language, like I just come out, beamed into their office from outer space. And I've seen this change in the last 10 months, more so, because now I see everybody is giving a time of day, if you will, to the caregivers. But that's a different story. What we're here for is that affirmations work. Written stuff works. And if you write it down, you did it every day, 1 note a day, I don't know.
Well, there were days that I missed. There were certainly days that I missed. There were days that my husband missed. I can't say there were 365 times two notes in that can, but most days we did. You know, life gets in the way and sometimes you miss a day. So I don't want anyone to think that we had 365 notes apiece in that can, but we had hundreds. We had a lot.
But what happens to that, right? You forget the good moments in your life. And
Mhm.
if you had, and so you mentioned that there were days when you had to think about what was good today. And
Right.
even if you just said, I had a cup of tea in peace, that was amazing because there was peace, right? And we
Right.
forget that peace of gratitude of whatever we have. And your story, when I read the tin can moments, I mean, you've got funny parts in there, and everything else, but the fact is that you never lost hope. Your attitude, your religion, your faith also interlinked. And I am of true, and you and I, we go back a little while, and we knew each other, we knew of each other, we're closer now, but you've impacted my life in a very positive way as well. So for that,
We
I thank
try.
you.
You know, God puts us where we are supposed to be.
And that's what I
You
said.
say I've helped you. You've helped me as well. And we don't really understand that sometimes, but God put us together for a reason. And I'm seeing now why, but who knew?
No,
And I
and
know
that's the thing, right? We never know who knocks on our door or whose path we're going to cross. And I always, I read a one time, long time ago, or I don't know if it was my parents that said something, I'm not sure, but they said that life is all about creating a tapestry,
Mhm.
right? And everybody is a part of that string. It could be a colorful one or just a brown and black one, but it adds to your tapestry. So make sure that the person that you are crossing paths with is not afraid person, because that tapestry is going to undo itself.
Right, right. You'll be affected by everything you let in your circle. You'll be affected by that. And before, I know we're probably getting short on time, but I can't leave talking about this trilogy without sharing a vision that came to me a few weeks ago. And that's book number 3. And that's where this journey of living a life of tin can moments goes full circle. Because the last book is going to be called Leaving a Life of Tin Can Moments. And I've already started interviewing some from my first book, some from my second book. Not that they're on their deathbeds, but they have created a legacy by the way they've lived their life. And so I'm having each of those people actually write their legacy that they're leaving for their children, their family, and dropping it in a tin can to pass on their legacy, as because eventually, you know what's going to happen. We're all going to die and go where we believe that we're going to be. And so living a life of tin can moments, tackling those ultimate tin can moments where you think, I'm going to die, or I've got this terrible illness. What do I do? Not letting that affect your life and just continuing on in your journey, then eventually we will all face having to leave our life of tin can moments. And the subtitle is Our Legacy. And it takes it full circle.
And it's amazing, right? Because I ask people, as the niche navigator, I ask them, what are you going to be remembered for? And people don't know, but this is an amazing way. So I implore everybody who's listening, I ask you to start doing this, and don't wait for the first of the year. Just create a note.
Right. We started in August in 2012.
We
So
are in October now, so people will think I'm going to wait. No, wait, don't wait. Start today. Think about what's happened to you today. And you know what? One thing that I believe in is that just create a notification on your calendar and write it down. You don't have to have a piece of paper. You
that's
don't.
right.
You can just write it on your calendar.
That's right. I interviewed a couple of people in my book, they do a tin can moment type thing, but they didn't have a name for it. They just, say, I do this and that. They didn't have a name for it.
Yeah, and we met. I met another person who is doing it, and they have like a little chest of whatever. You don't have to have a piece of paper. You have technology now. You just use that. But the thing is, just be grateful for what the blessings of the day are, and that's going to change your life a lot. And Sonia, you're such an amazing person. I've always looked up to you, and you've always helped me in a good, positive way, and I'm really thankful that you are my friend and a person that I choose to walk this path with right now. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but right now we're walking together, even though you're in Texas and I'm in Chicago.
Arkansas. I'm in Arkansas.
Arkansas, okay. Oh, you're in Arkansas.
I'm in Arkansas, but I was in Dallas last week with the pre-launch of my second book.
Oh, okay. So how's that going? You were also nominated about your book, right?
Yes, my first book was nominated for an Author Academy Award. It's now called the Authors Elite Award. And I'm in the top 6 finalists in my category. And it just so happens this Friday, October 23rd, will be the announcement at a red carpet event. And all of the nominees or finalists, I should say, are zoomed in via Zoom. So I'll be in the room via Zoom. And when I find out whether or not, what's amazing about this award is you have to have a social media presence. That's one of the qualifications. But the reason you get the award is because of the content of the book. So it's an award based on content. And, when my book became an Amazon #1 bestseller, to me, that was the number of copies sold, which is wonderful. But did they get the message? You know what I'm saying? That's a number, which is wonderful. This is about the content and the message of the book. But I still need a social media presence. So if you don't mind me posting, I will post where people can go and vote for Living a Life of Tin Can Moments by Sonya Etchemendy. And there are instructions how you do it. When you actually go on the link, you've got to go to page 7/16 to find the health book. And I'll post that right now.
Go ahead. After we finish, you can post it. So I'm sure the listeners would love to do that for you.
That I appreciate it.
Again, it's so amazing to have you on my show. Really, I am really happy, honored, and humbled to have you on my show. And I look forward to the next book, Tin Can Moment, the Ultimate Tin Can Moment.
Yes, yes.
This has been a very interesting conversation. Thank you, Sonia, so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. And for those of you who like this, join us again next week with another guest and another Munira's Musings, because we will bring you other stories and experiences that will help you on your journey. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Munira's Musings with your host, Munira Zahabi. If you enjoyed our show, please share and subscribe to this channel. And for more content, please join our Facebook group.